All right. So in this episode, I'm going to take you back to a place called Yamhill. We were living in a cherry orchard up on a hill. My parents were renting this place, and it was during the harvest that this happened. It was bustling with like farm workers, and they were coming to pick the cherries. And so there was a lot of people around at this time in the fields. And at this time, I was just a tiny baby. I was this little crawler. And like I've said before, I crawled like a lizard. I don't really remember this place, obviously, but my mom told these stories. And so the story, I always like picture what the story, like where she was and what it looked like and how she was like, taking care of this farm. And she told me that she really enjoyed it. She put the clothes on the line and she was taking care of the goat. And for the first time in her life, she had a potbelly pig, and that she had always wanted since she was a kid. And she named her Penelope, and they called her Penelope Pigstop. So interesting name. And then we had our first Shade Tree Jones, who was a black lab. And altogether, we had 4 of them. I believe this dog was one of the first. And so I think that's how it went. We had chickens and a goat. And my mom was always very upset at the goat because this goat was just so annoying. My mom would spend all evening cooking a nice dinner for the family, and we'd be sitting down to eat. And all of a sudden, this goat would like bust through the door. It was an old farmhouse, so they tried every trick in the book to keep this goat out, but it would bust through the door and jump up on the table right in the middle of dinner, and the table would, all the plates would go flying. Everything was everywhere, and it was complete chaos. My mom was always so mad about it, and she would lock the door and she would do everything she could, but that goat was on that table often. It happened a lot. And Penelope was like the sweetheart of the farm. She followed Shade Tree Jones around everywhere. She acted like the dog. She probably, if she could, she would have barked like the dog. She was super smart, and my mom just loved that pig. Think of like this place, old farmhouse. There's beautiful cherry orchards out front, like all kinds of things that my mom just really loved. And there's a dirt driveway cutting through the trees, and the house kind of sat back up on the hill. And it was a big old farmhouse, like I said. It was rickety and junky, but cozy and comfy at the same time, just like they are. And my mom really enjoyed living there, and she talked often about this place. But of course, change is always very difficult, and we had a lot of it, so we were kind of used to it. Like I never remember as a child being like, okay, we're all set. This is where we're going to be for the rest of our life. It was always like, well, we'll see how long this lasts, kind of thing. So I'm sure that's what my mom was thinking. Me being a crawler, my brother being about 2.5, 3 years old. So my dad was sick again. And my mom hadn't seen him in a while. And when he finally appeared, he was coming up through the hill of the orchard, and he had a bat or heavy stick. Anyway, I know he had something in his hands. And my mom knew what that meant. She could tell that he was so angry. And he had that stick. And so she remembered from before when she was pregnant. If you remember the stories about before, when I was telling you about how he had hurt my grandparents and sent them to the hospital, my mom was pregnant then. And now she was like, oh my word, he has a stick. What is he going to do with this? Like, oh my word, I mean, how scary that would be. So she grabbed me a mat. She's looking out the window, terrified. She's like clinging to me, holding me, and Matt is wrapped around her leg. Kids just know that something's wrong with their parents, even though they don't understand what's going on. And she's just watching. Like, she can't move. She can't do anything at the moment because she's so frightened that she's just stuck there. So he's walking up the hill, and she just said he is just walking like he is bound and determined, basically to kill something. And she was just like, I am his target. So actually, one of the guys that was working in the field was like, you're not going up to your wife with that stick, your wife and kids. And again, my dad was like, oh my word, somebody's trying to get in the way, keep me from my family. That's not going to happen. So he turned on him and just beat the crap out of that guy. And poor guy, I have no idea what happened to him. There's no other stories about him, but then he left that guy on the ground, bloody, and he ran up to the house. My mom was still like a statue, scared and freaking out, and he just busts through the door, and she is shaking and holding on to us, and he grabs my brother, took him, and went and was running to our step van. He grabbed my brother, he got him to the step van, put him in there. My mom is like following him, screaming. She's in fight mode. She's in I have got to save my kids mode. And so she's grabbing Matt. She's trying to get him back out. She's screaming at my dad while holding me. And she grabs for him, and my dad pushes her back, and she's stumbling. And of course, both me and Matt are screaming, crying. And then my dad gets in the step van and flies out of there, dust flying. And the thing is my dad is so blind. He cannot see. He cannot see anything without his glasses, and he had no glasses on. He wore Coke bottle lens glasses, and he has no glasses, and my mom is freaking out. Oh my word. He doesn't even have his glasses. He can't even see. He took my son. They're going to end up in the ditch somewhere. And so she runs in the house, and she calls Mike and Sandy. Mike and Sandy were also in the story about the flood. If you remember that story, he was the one that threw the rock in the back of the house and had seen that the house was bulging. So if you haven't seen that story, heard that story, you can watch that or listen to it. Anyway, so then Mike also, and I don't know all the details, but Mike also lived near them here when they were in Yamhill. Maybe they met here. I don't know. Lifelong friends. I know that. My mom had called Mike and said, you know what? Steve just came here. He's sick again. He just took my son. He is on the road somewhere. He has no glasses. Is there any way that you can go and look for him?" And so, of course, Mike was like, "Yes, of course, we will do that." He was very helpful. So there for my parents. I don't know about the story if he went and looked for him. I don't know that side. So I know that my mom's waiting patiently, and she is pacing the house, and she's freaking out, and she's holding me and for dear life, and she's praying, getting on her knees and praying that Matt and Steve are not dead somewhere. And she's just uncontrollably sobbing. And a little while later, Mike calls, the phone rings, freaks her out. She goes and grabs the phone, and it's Mike, and she thought for sure he was calling to say they're dead. But he called to say that they're here. They're here. They're both here. We got Matt. He's okay. No problem. Don't worry about it. Your son is safe. How they got there is in a later story, I will tell you. But then as soon as they grabbed Matt, my dad took off for the woods that they had behind their house. And they just took Matt and didn't worry about it. My mom didn't have an extra car, and she knew that Matt was safe there. They had a little boy, same age. And so they're just like, don't even worry about it. Like, we'll take care of him. And so Matt stayed there for the entire 3 days that my dad was up in the woods. And later, there's another story about that. My dad was in the woods, and he told us, we didn't know like what he was doing or anything, but later he told us that he had buried himself because it wasn't in the warm season. I don't know exactly what season, but it was pretty cold at nights, and he had buried himself in the dirt to stay warm. And I guess according to him, he had been talking to God the whole time. Anyway, 3 days later, he comes back and gets Matt, and somehow they make it back to the house. Now, I don't know if Mike brought him, and Sandy picked Mike up. You know, I always like kind of have to fill in the details because that part of the story was never told. No, there wasn't details. Like, it doesn't all come together as like the story wasn't like told from beginning to end to me ever. It was always like pieces. So I had to take those pieces and then put them together in my head from the stories that I've heard my whole life. And my mom told these stories over and over and over again to different people. So I've heard them forever. Is back with my mom, and they're having dinner, and she's like, oh, good. You know, this didn't last very long. Everything's fine. Everything's calm. And she's just kind of watching my dad and checking to see if maybe make sure that he's okay and he's sane. And I'm sitting down at the table, and of course she's like nervous, but like just trying to pretend everything's okay, because that's like the best way to deal with it. And don't trigger him saying anything. Don't get him upset. I've always learned, don't get people upset. He sat there, and he's eating his dinner, and he looks at my mom, and he's like, so while I was up in the forest, I was talking to God. My mom's like, okay. And he's like, and God told me I have to kill you. And I don't know if it was quick on her feet or what exactly she was thinking, but she was like, well, can I have one last wish before you kill me? And he's like, absolutely anything you want. And she goes, I would like to go say goodbye to my mom. And he was like, yep, we can do that. Then she is not sleeping. She's packing. She's getting everything ready. And the thing that she knows, at least, even if something happens to her, her kids will be safe. So that's all I can do is make sure my kids are safe. I'm sure that's all she was thinking. That he was probably going to proceed with his plan of killing her, but her kids would be at her mom's. And maybe somehow she would be saved as well. But that's all she could think of at the moment, was getting her kids and getting back to her mom. She needed to see her mom. She wanted to be with her mom. She was just so scared and so, like, can you even think in that moment? Like, what do you do with this farm? And what do you do with this house? And you're renting to somebody. Responsibilities don't really matter in that moment. Like, you have to be in survival mode. So who knows what happened to the dog? I don't remember if they brought Shade Tree with. I know they didn't bring the chickens or anything, and maybe hopefully either Mike did something with them, or, you know, I always think about that, like, what happened to all the animals? But I don't think about it in the moment that my mom was telling it, you know. I think about it now, like, what happened to Penelope, the potbelly pig? Like, where did the pig go? And, you know, who knows? Like, they were never part of the story, and my grandma certainly wasn't bringing a farm to her house. She lived in the city. Anyway, my mom got us all ready, and she brought us to the car. She got us all in the car, and I did ask her at one point, well, how did he drive if he didn't know where his glasses were? And how did you get to Grandma's? And she had told me, well, I put you guys in the back of the step van, and he let me drive. And because he couldn't see anything. And she said the great part was he slept the whole time. So I didn't have him in my ear telling me about how he was going to kill me, because I don't even know if I could drive if I was constantly thinking about that. I'm like, yeah, I definitely couldn't. And then she drove to my grandma's in survival mode. And thank the Lord she did. And I don't really know the story from there. And unfortunately, there is nobody alive that knows that story. But there is a part 2 that I will tell you later. But yes, it always gets me choked up about talking about these again, because as going through being a mom, I don't know how I would survive or live through that. I'm sure I would, but my children's lives was really, really calm compared to mine. Anyway, I love you guys, and keep following me. Please comment. It really helps if you could just even put a thumbs up that you were there. Maybe even add like where you're from, where you're listening from. I would so appreciate it. And if you could subscribe, like my channel. I'm really trying to get more viewers, and in order to do that, I just need a little help from you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Love you. I hope you have a very, very blessed day.